Good evening. It is Thursday, November 21st, and we are talking about The Singer Sisters by Sarah Meltzer. So
Seltzer.
I looked up
Vanessa, I
Sarah
think the
Meltzer.
name is Sarah Seltzer.
Seltzer. I keep
Yes.
saying Meltzer. Seltzer. Thank you, Sue. Sarah Seltzer. And I looked her up. I looked up the right one because I couldn't find a study guide. And I went into her direct messages in Instagram, which Sammy Krakow had to show me how to do, and said, "Do you have a study guide?" And then she did one for me.
Oh,
So I was like, "Well, that was nice."
mhm.
And let's just look what she looks like here. She's young.
Figures.
That's her right there.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, she's in the
She's
back of the book.
she's young. Um,
Pretty.
very pretty. Yeah. And so then I, of course, started following her on Instagram, and she was uh she was very sad after the election. So she seems, very, very nice. Do you think that the Singer Sisters, do you think that's a good name for the book? Tell me what you thought about the book.
I don't know if you want to hear what I have to say about this
You
book.
can say, listen,
Okay,
that's
this
I don't
book
think that you
drove
want to hear what I
this
have to
book
say.
you can
drove
say
me
it, people.
It drove me crazy. There were
Yeah, I
so
didn't
many
like it.
characters, and she kept throwing names in the middle of like Leroy. It's like I had to go back and figure out Leroy. And it wasn't like it was one person's chapter. It was somewhat one person's chapter, but
Yeah,
not always. And
right.
the dates going back and forth, and it really just about drove me crazy. And then sometimes she didn't write in full sentences. And
Mm-hmm.
that also made me a little crazy too.
Yeah,
And I often had to go back and reread what I had read because it just like didn't make sense at first. And
yeah,
and it's almost like she assumed you were in her brain.
yeah.
You know?
Um,
Excuse me, Vanessa,
yes.
I I apologize for not saying hello before because my other computer doesn't have sound.
Oh, well, I'm so glad you're here, Joe.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Can't see her.
So this is what I think about Sarah Seltzer. First of all, we had two um we had we had two back to back, and I apologize for World War II. So one, this was a different time period, so I was happy about that. Two, I listened to the book and read it, and listening
Oh,
was easier. And the
Probably.
only other thing I'll say is between us is
Yeah.
that I was also reading the book that Adam Nimoy did because he spoke on Sunday,
yeah.
Uh-huh.
and his book was also super hard to read. I mean, this one at least I could get through. His book
Okay.
I could only listen to. And he was, if you weren't there, and I did videotape him. It's not for public, but I have it. And if you want to hear it, I can send you the link. He was a great raconteur. And I
Yes.
made this Sarah Seltzer is also a great raconteur. But we've talked about editing here ad nauseum, but I didn't ask Adam Nimoy in front of everyone, but uh in the car, and I said, "What are you working on?" He goes, "Another book." I was like, "Oh no." Sue.
Well, I did not like this book at all.
Okay,
And I had to force myself to finish reading it
good.
because it bored me. I didn't think she was a very good writer. I think she kept flipping around, just as Lynn had said.
Even within the same
Uh,
chapter,
and I think she was writing about a time period that I absolutely cannot identify with.
Mm.
Really?
And I think, yeah, I mean, God, I'm 85 years old. I
Yeah, but what about, with Judy, and you didn't, I don't
I
know.
did not like the book, and in fact, I told my daughter this afternoon, I've got my book club tonight. I'm gonna say one thing, I'm gonna tell people I really didn't like the book, and I had to force myself to finish it, and then I will keep my mouth shut and hear what other people have to say.
You
So
don't
now,
have to keep your mouth shut. We're
now
between
you've
friends
heard
here.
me, I'm not saying anymore.
No, you,
I'm
we
in
need
agreement.
to. Hi, Paula.
I,
Vanessa, I agree with Susan exactly. I felt exactly the same way.
I'm,
Okay, all right, Paula and then Merle.
I got the audio, which I do not like to do audio. I was lost after an hour. I tried again. I was lost again. I actually got the book last night from the library because I was like number 72 on the list. I tried so hard. And I agree with Susan 100%. It's all over the place and not my style, and time and place and multiple characters, and was not cohesive. I could relate to the genre of the music and the period, but I don't think she's a very masterful author. Although then I tried to read reviews and got wonderful reviews. People thought it was brilliant, but it was like this. And the librarian said to me, don't try the audio. It's impossible. It's the worst audio we've ever gotten.
Wow.
And that was from our Vernon Hills library, which,
Right.
and they're wonderful there. She said it's very difficult.
Did you, anybody, Joan?
I couldn't get into it. I started it and I just couldn't finish it.
Okay, all
I,
right.
I-
Merle. Wait. I'm unmuting you. You're good. Now go.
After listening to Adam Nimoy, I kept thinking how hard it is to be the child of someone who's famous and
Uh-huh.
wanting to compete with them, and what a bad parent they were. And that scene particularly where Emma lets a lady into the house and she's alone and she's 8 years old, and it turns out this woman named Flower, which later gives rise to a very good song. But I thought, this is such a hard life for the child, and these children should just be happy and privileged, but they're not. They suffer.
No,
They
it's a very
suffer.
good point. It's an excellent point.
Did you think that some of the plot points were contrived? Andy.
First, I wanted to respond, please, to generally about the book and then about the contrived. I didn't dislike the book. I thought it was interesting following actually who slept with who and whose kid was who and who stole whose music. And I excused some of the very poor narrative to the feeling of the time that they were either stoned or drunk half the time.
Yeah.
And just sort of this cloud like effect. And yes, was it contrived? Yes. With
Rose, and then she comes back, and you know, I don't know how that, plays out.
well,
I mean, we know how it plays out.
yeah, it was confusing because you heard about Rose and then all of a sudden, you think back, oh, that was the nanny, but it took a little bit of thinking about it with, oh, her name was Rose,
Yeah.
it wasn't really clear, the book. And you're right, it was very much like drugs. Yeah. Somebody
Yeah,
writing
I
under
mean,
drugs.
yeah. Although, when you read these things, and I was trying to see if she slipped up, Rose couldn't find Leroy, there were no cell phones.
Mhm.
There's no way to get a hold of someone. There's no email. There's no this. I mean, I remember, look, I think that our kids, don't know how to use maps. And even, do you remember getting triptychs from AAA? Everyone on this call remembers that.
A
Yeah.
big
And,
book.
some of the those little books, yeah.
Mhm.
Some of the things that they had to do, it does, remind you of that. And the whole, what did you think again about the abortion plot? Judy had Rose, and then Rose has an abortion. Thoughts on that? Realistic?
Unfortunately, I can't comment because I didn't get to that.
Okay. Well, Rose has an abortion.
Rose was like
The
oh,
daughter, Judy's daughter,
daughter,
nanny.
the nanny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And she gets pregnant. She goes to Judy and Sylvia, and they, bing, bang, bong, they get her an
But
abortion.
at that time in New York, their abortions were the place where it was legal. Because
Yes.
I know I had a friend who had an issue and it was right around that time too. So, that was very realistic. There's no question about it.
And I don't think it's, I don't know, maybe somebody's more knowledgeable, is how, if you take 10 average women, how common is abortion? Would it be 2 out of 10? Would it be 4 out of 10?
I don't know, but I know this. It's more common than you think.
Mhm.
And I react to these books and even television shows where they have the baby because they don't because they don't want to have an abortion. And I think that at least they faced it in this story. And I think it's important. I think it's just important in literature because it's so prevalent in our time. I will tell you this. We were in Israel and we had a guide and he was lovely. And he talked, we took him out for dinner and, my kids were there, they were young. And he talked about his daughter's abortion like she had a tooth out. And all the Americans at the table were like, "Hmm?" And of course, Israelis, they talk about stuff that Americans don't usually.
Yeah.
You
I'm
would
not sure, was it in this book where they were saying that back in the day, this happened where people did have babies and gave them away and it was very common. And so, and it's just in recent times that it's become more of a something that you don't talk about kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Because back in the day, they didn't have them. And it was really dangerous to try and get an abortion before they were legal, which is why
yes.
it's
Which
so
is what's going to
important
happen now, but
Yes.
that's for another.
Mhm.
Sue and then Merle.
So I'm breaking my rule. I said I wasn't.
You can talk, Sue. We want you to talk.
I said, well, I didn't realize this was going to end up being an abortion discussion.
Well, I mean,
But
there were,
I know there's an abortion in the book.
right.
And so I do, I do understand that's why it came up. And I don't know if I've ever told this group before, but it is no longer being kept a secret in my family. But my youngest daughter did have an abortion when she was 17 years old. It was the first time she had ever had sex with a boy. And I kind of blame myself to some degree because I just expected my daughters to be virgins, certainly while they were in high school. And I didn't prepare her. I did say to her, if a boy wants sex from you, he's going to tell you he loves you. He's going to love you while he's having the sex.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I did tell her those things, but apparently this happened. She came to me and crying, and I told her I'd help her, which I did. And at that time, it had just become legal. Roe versus Wade had happened. So I called our gynecologist and they took her to Michael Reese Hospital. And she had it. And to this day, she is now an escort for abortion clinics. She works at Downers Grove every week.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, Mom, most of them are married women.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And who either can't afford to have a child or are have already had 3 or 4 children and just can't handle another one.
Yeah.
And, or their contraceptive failed them. It was absolutely an accident. And she does this every week. And she's now married and has 2 children and a wonderful husband. And had she not had that abortion when she was 17 years old, who knows
That's
what
right.
her life would have
Exactly.
been.
Exactly.
And the one thing,
Exactly.
and the one thing I told her then, don't tell him.
Oh,
I said, don't you tell him, because God knows what his parents, if he are gonna want. And we're keeping this to ourselves. This is nobody's business but ours.
yeah.
And she listened to me.
You mean don't tell the father of the
Don't
baby,
tell the boy,
of the
right,
fetus?
exactly.
Well, you're lucky she came to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing it. It's such an important story for us all too, especially in these days. Merle.
I went to college with Rabbi Daniel Syme. He went to the University of Michigan and he wrote a lot of nice articles. And he wrote an article about abortion from the Reformed Jewish perspective many, many years ago, I think in the 70s or 80s. 80s, he wrote it in the 80s. And he said that if it's done by the 42nd day of the pregnancy, it's considered okay. That's like 6 weeks. And it's probably the soonest they can do it. And I thought that was a very nice article to put out because I think a lot of Jewish people maybe wouldn't know what the point of view is, but for Reform Judaism, he said it's absolutely okay. The
Yeah.
other thing was when you have a child and you want your child to go to college, and their daughter Emma was accepted at Brown, which is such an excellent university. And then she says, no, I'm not going to college. And Mom, you didn't go to college because I'm going to become a songwriter and a singer and I'm leaving now. Goodbye. I mean, that is so hurtful to parents. And I'm sure that happens all the time where they have this wonderful opportunity to go to college. My daughter is a songwriter by profession for the last more than 20 years in Los Angeles, but she didn't do this till after she had a master's degree already and had done some teaching and
Wow.
other kind of work. And she said to us, I'd like to go to LA and be a songwriter. And we said, bye. And now we just visit her a few times a year and she comes here. But she really has a fully developed career. But she wasn't performing very much. She did a little performing, but she said, I don't want to perform. I just want to write songs. But now she's got one of these songbooks that she could sell now, that's worth a fortune. And you have to be very careful when you sell your songbook because she wrote for a lot of rock stars and people like Miley Cyrus. You have to be very careful, and it is a very big deal career.
What's her
and
name?
Jeannie Lurie. Her name is Jeannie, Jeanni, Jeannie Lurie. If you look her up in Google, you'll get pages and
Oh
pages.
yeah, I'm looking her up
about
right
Jeannie.
Awesome.
But it was a great career, and she loved it. But these people went through so much drama,
Really.
Mhm.
and just the whole thing.
And the husband too. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, he's out on the road, but he's, with this other young woman and,
Yeah.
it was
That part was just hard to read. And I think we know that that happens because now celebrities, can't go out their door without the paparazzi being there. And of course, we've been, had a front seat to what's ever happening in our government, or the lack thereof, but of, these men who, and they're, sexual predators. I think in the book, it wasn't rape, that was consensual and, uh, uh, sad, but, you know, and when you think back to the ignorance that, Judy thought she could share her pill with people. I
really,
mean,
well,
who
the naivete.
whoever heard
Right.
that?
Well, but that was right around when the pill first came out.
Yeah.
So people
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of information.
Yeah.
And, it was tricky back then.
Right.
Yeah.
And, also that, Emma was never as, prolific as her mother. you know, she kept re-recording her mother's songs and, you know, and then the mother stopped because she had, you know, those two kids. And, I mean, and the story of the brother who's gay, but he was, such a talented music, uh, conductor, or whatever he
He
did.
didn't really develop his character very much,
No,
so,
no,
but, yeah, but, you know, it was hard to read. That's all I'm
Yeah.
gonna say. It
Yeah.
was just tough.
right.
But then
Um,
when you say about, you know, guys going out, I mean, John Lennon went out for a pack of cigarettes and didn't come back for a couple of years, you know, so that
Yeah.
kind of thing did go on. But
yeah,
this guy, this Dave wasn't that big. I mean, he had a big hit, but he wasn't
Right.
like a major
no,
person, a
no.
performer. Yeah.
So here's some things, an interview with her. How did you find the subject for this novel? I saw a number of folk concerts around the beginning of the 2010s. Pete Seeger's birthday at Madison Square Garden, a memorial concert for Kate McGarrigle. I've never heard of her. I was captivated by the thought of folk music in a musical family as a central organizing idea. Maybe she needed a little more organizing. When I started writing, other interests came in: feminism, the relationship between baby boomers and subsequent generations, New York City, and my love of fictional biographies and biopics. I was also a huge fan of The Wallflowers, that's fronted by Jacob Dylan, son of Bob, and having a crush on his younger, dreamy singer while discovering his dad's incredible body at work at age 14. In general, my book was influenced by musicians ranging from Bob Dylan, okay, we know Bob Dylan, to Annie DeFranco, never heard of her. People who ask my characters are based on, but there's no one-to-one. If the Singer Sisters characters remind you of an artist you like, they're probably part of the tapestry of inspiration. I mean, it it is a little romantic as she talks about as they gig, and you know, she just went off to New York and you know, living in squalor. I and of course, Judy's parents, Anne, they were very difficult. And oh, I have some questions about her.
Yeah, but
Anna shows what?
oh no, I was just gonna say New York at that time was not a really safe place to go.
No.
Because I remember we went in the 70s and it was dangerous, kind of. It wasn't
Mhm.
really the place that you would send your kid off to.
No. There was a time, you know, where
Mhm.
it's much more cleaned up even now. And
Mhm.
even now there's, you know, plenty, you know, it's a big city. There's plenty of problems there. Anna shows a mix of instincts towards Judy during their time in New Hampshire, some cruelty and some tenderness. What are some of the flaws and strengths of the different mother figures in the novel? Did you like Anna as a mother? Did you like Judy as a mother? Do you think Judy was a better mother to Emma or Rose?
Well, I think Sylvia was a better mother to Emma. Sylvia was really the role model for Emma.
Yes.
Yeah, Judy was it's interesting that she would totally give up the music for the kids. And yes, she wrote like children's stuff, but that like didn't jive with me. If you're really a musician and you're really into it, you know, yes, you make up songs for kids, but she should have still been writing, you know, if she
Yeah,
was really a musician. And
right.
Leon is a musician, but you know, I know this isn't what your question was, but
That's
but
okay.
but Leon, it seems like, you know, they didn't really flesh him out very much. They said that he was musically better, but
Right.
they didn't really give any instances about where he excelled, except that, you know, he was the first child. So
Producer, that's
sometimes,
the name for it.
okay, so the first child sometimes gets a lot of the accolades as opposed to
Mhm.
the second child. So that was kind of not a real even mothering kind of
Yeah.
technique.
Yeah.
And she was closer to the father, though. That's true.
Oh, yeah, the father.
True.
Andy.
And then I thought it was really odd that Judy gave her music book to Anne, to Rose,
The
The
Rose.
Rose.
who's
Yes,
not the musician.
right.
And then Rose gives it to Emma. And that was just kind of cruel. I know-
Yeah, I think that, when I asked about the things that were contrived in the book, that's one of them. Besides Emma being hired like as the au pair, and that whole thing
Yeah.
was, it was goofy. And I guessed that Rose was the daughter before, they revealed it in the book. And I think it's also interesting Sylvia was gay, Leon was gay, and they talked a little bit about Sylvia and, her special friends. And uh, I don't know, I thought that was, I don't know if they fleshed it out enough, or it was mildly interesting.
It seemed like Sylvia was there for people and Judy was just not for the
Yeah.
most part, because you're always seeing instances where Sylvia is taking care of Emma, is taking
Yeah.
care of, Rose is taking care of Judy, but Judy isn't really much of a caregiver in this whole story.
Right. Merle.
Well, I thought Judy was a very strange mother. Her 8-year-old was fixing a drink, an alcoholic beverage with gin for a stranger, that woman Flower. And the little girl said, my mom taught me how to mix a drink. And can I offer you one? I think that is so strange under any circumstances. I've never heard of that.
I actually think, kind of I think Judy had some mental health issues.
Mhm.
Maybe she had postpartum. I mean, she was depressed. And
Yeah.
I think when you're that depressed, it's hard to interact with your children, and and she was unhappy, and the whole thing with Dave, I don't
Yeah.
think she just couldn't handle it. And that was the outcome. And yeah. Rose compares the life she's built as an academic with a family to the fame and fortune her family has experienced, while Judy compares the work she's done raising her children and repairing her relationship to her life as an artist. Is it even possible to measure someone's artistic or social contributions against their caregiving?
Mm.
I don't know. Thoughts?
Some people can balance it all. Can't speak to this character, but certainly in life, some people can balance high-powered careers with great parenting.
Yeah. And again, we're going back to Adam Nimoy, and some
Mm.
people can't. He had for the people who weren't there, he had a very fractious relationship with his father. And I've said this a couple times now, it's no coincidence that he wrote the book after his dad died.
Right.
Merle.
Well, when Adam Nimoy said, as much as he had a difficult time with his father, he had those special moments when he went to see his father play Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof and
Right.
standing room, and everybody was just so worshipful of him. And he got to enjoy all those experiences. But if you try to balance out the two, it seemed like all he really wanted was just a regular father, and that the mother had the full responsibility for all that. And then one day, after 32 years, the father just left her for another actress. It was just sad.
Yeah.
How can you measure it if you want what you really want as a parent?
Yeah. 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 It's we see a lot in the office, and it comes to a head, I think, with life cycle events. So the one that we see all the time is B'nai Mitzvah. And it's just absolutely heartbreaking
Mhm.
to see people and how they get that, so far apart. I mean, I do think Judy and Dave kind of kept it together a little bit. What did you think? So again, the people who didn't get this far, he dies of a heart attack, kind of abruptly. Am I right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think
it was
so.
like, and you're like, what's happening, and they all come back, and um, it's, that part
Well,
was like,
that's contrived because then that
yes,
brings Emma back to her mother. And
yes,
otherwise, would she have ever? Because the father wanted her to call and she didn't ever
yes.
call. Then she did call, but she didn't get answered. She didn't try
Lynn, you are
again.
correct.
And then the father dies, and then all of a sudden they're,
Yeah,
they're back in the family mode again.
yeah,
So that was very contrived.
yeah. Um, so, continuing with her interview, you mentioned Sylvie and Rose as secondary characters and Judy and Emma as the protagonists. Throughout the novel, you use close third-person point of view. What went into the decision to break away from looking over just Judy or Emma's shoulders to include these other women? Emma and Judy are both such intense characters. I mean, large parts of both Judy's and Emma's sections are in their adolescence, right? Though they are not even 20 years old, and this youthfulness is one of the reasons their perspectives can feel so invigorating and so frustrating, because that's what it is to be that age. Did you think it was invigorating?
I sometimes had trouble figuring out who was speaking.
Yeah.
And I would have to go back and say, okay, here's the dialogue, but who is saying what? Because she did flip back and forth between who was first person in this book.
Yes, yes.
And that was
Um,
part of what was made it so difficult to read.
yeah,
I found Emma
So,
just outright rude.
mm,
It was like
yes,
it was not even rebellious. It just seemed rude the way
yeah.
she
angry.
was portrayed.
And bratty and um um Chris Rock does this thing about, he talks about his children, saying that he grew up poor. He had to scramble for every penny. He goes, my kids are rich. They don't know what it is to work or the value of a dollar. And this is also, both Judy and David came from, well, wait a minute. I guess Judy had some money, right? From the Jewish parents and the place in New Hampshire, whatever.
Yeah.
But David did not. And so I don't know. Yeah, Emma, and I mean, Leanne seemed a little bit nicer, but Emma was, I don't know if she was too much like Judy, or, I mean, obviously they just didn't get along.
It's like I wanted to slap her,
Yes,
listening to the book. I just wanted
yes,
to just sit down, close your mouth.
right.
It
Throughout the
seemed like
novel, the
she
character,
was
yeah, I'm sorry.
angry, she was really angry. And
Yes.
I think part of it was being a star allowed her not to really grow up. And
Oh,
maybe that's a piece of it too, because
that's a great insight.
being on the stage and having all this people adoring you and all this kind of gives you just it messes with your ego.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that was it because like you said, Judy really didn't treat her as much like a child. The father did. He taught her and he, did the
Right.
guitar, but maybe she didn't feel like she had gotten nurtured, so she never really got past that angry
Mm-hmm.
girl teenage stuff.
Yeah. I think you can see that in, some famous musicians who um now she did have a childhood,
Mhm.
Emma, but
Yeah.
like Michael Jackson, and who, and I don't think that Judy and David were pushing her
Mhm.
abnormally,
And
whatever.
then she leaves Rose out in the middle of the water and she knows she can't swim.
Oh yeah,
I
that was
mean,
bad.
what's that about? That's definitely the anger part of it
That's anger.
and the jealousy, but
Yeah,
it's so immature.
yeah,
So she really
yeah.
doesn't grow up and
And
maybe
that
really
goes
doesn't.
back, to when we don't, I'm not sure and the more I think about this now is like,
Mhm.
who do we like the best in this book? Like Emma comes around, Sylvia's nice, right?
Yes.
Sylvia, Leon,
Yeah,
Leon's
well,
nice.
yeah.
Leon,
He's
like
portrayed very
Leon.
positively all the time.
Right. Mad at David for having affairs.
Yeah.
And Judy just seems so hot and cold with her children.
Mm-hmm.
Merle.
Well, when Judy sang, she had people who worshiped her. I mean, that whole scene at the end of the book where these people just seem to love her
Yeah.
so much. Like, well, her contribution to the world maybe wasn't to her children at all, but to her audience.
Yeah.
That last scene, they are so worshipful
Yeah. Yeah.
at the concert.
Yeah. I mean, that's something as we, I, I, I don't know any musicians, and I guess we can think about it, and we've looked at stories and different musicians in their lives and books and movies, but that's I can't even imagine that feeling, and I can see how somebody would become addicted to it, and want to be in front of the crowd. Throughout the novel, the characters use lyrics to communicate things they can't convey in other ways, and sometimes fail to understand the meaning behind their family members' lyrics. Did you have a favorite song in the book? I kind of wanted them to sing, and I was
did
listening
too.
to it,
I
but
mean, that was many of the Audible books. The advantage is they do sing,
right,
and there was no singing in this
No.
version, which was
No.
disappointing.
because they're not real songs, because they're not real
Maybe
musicians.
that's
Right.
it.
Yeah. She did have a song list, and which is on Amazon, and it's not on the platform that I have, so I couldn't get to the different songs that she was listening to. And again, when I first started the book, I hadn't seen a picture of her, so I'm closer to Judy's age than Emma's age. And I think Sarah is closer to Emma's age than Judy's age. And I thought she was older. And so it's kind of interesting to think about her perspectives writing this from, being a younger woman. And I don't know. I don't know if she got it all right. And yeah, so.
Is the, is the author a parent herself?
I don't know. I'll see if I can
She
find
has
it.
she has a husband and 2 children.
Yeah.
Oh,
Says, yeah. This is her
That's good.
debut novel.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I will say this, it's not self-published.
No, no. I looked to see if it was.
I know.
And I saw some
Those
of
are
these
even worse.
some of these run-on sentences and these phrases that are not sentences. And then I was like, is this self-published?
Thank God Jesse Solomon's not on. So
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
she
God.
goes through these books, and
There were 2 things that happened in the book that the one disadvantage of Audible, it's very hard to go back to figure out where
yes,
you were. So there was a samovar and a ring that was taken, and something with the samovar. Can somebody explain what happened with those?
I know what it was. The samovar and the ring belonged to Judy. They were Anna's. And she passed it down. Well, no, wait a minute. Rose, I think, stole the ring.
Oh,
Or did she
really?
give it to her?
I thought she gave it to her.
I think she gave it to her. Oh, no, that's what it was. She gave it to her, but Emma thought she stole it.
Yes.
Okay, that's
Yes.
the ring. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was,
and-
and when they met at the concert,
Mhm.
Rose let her try it on and then she kept it.
Yes.
Emma. Yeah.
And the samovar, again, Judy just gave to her. I don't, why would she do that?
I know
And-
because she didn't even know the grandmother, Rose. She didn't
Oh.
even, I mean, that didn't make any sense to me either.
No,
But
it-
it was another contrived thing so that Emma could take it from Rose.
yeah, and be mad at Rose.
Yes, because she thought
Ah,
she stole it
yeah,
before she realized that it was her sister,
right. Her half
Okay.
sister,
half sister.
right.
This is very dramatic.
It is very dramatic. Wait, and okay, so Judy's Rose's father, who's this famous musician, that's the other thing. The other contrivances are they're all famous.
Yeah,
And he dies of lung cancer, right?
I don't remember.
Right. He died. He also
Yes,
dies.
he dies, yes.
And all the men are dying and the women are still living. And Rose, they said it was her uncle, but she knew that that was her father,
Oh, you're talking about Rose's father. Yeah,
Rose's
what was his
father.
name? Thomas or
Amen or
Amen, right.
right. I don't know how you pronounce it, some
Oh.
Irish name.
Yeah,
And Judy comes with Leon,
Leon to
right?
to see him when he's dying and tells
Yes,
him he's a family friend.
right.
Really?
Well, at least we can laugh
We're
at it.
laughing about this. But yeah,
As
it's
the
pretty
more we
crazy.
talk about it, you're like,
The
boy.
more ridiculous it sounds.
Well,
Yeah.
here's the thing. She's out on a book tour, people, and
Yeah.
there's interviews and the whole 9 yards. So, and I'm sure she'll go, when they get a publisher, the first thing the publisher wants is a second book.
Yes.
Is what's
Um,
interesting the Jewish family not
oh,
being a traditional Jewish family? Is that
yeah,
what's having all these musicians is a little
right.
unusual. It's not your
Yes,
typical suburbia.
right.
No,
Although when Judy goes to get married, she marries a Jewish guy.
Dave.
Um, and then at the end, Rose, because her mother's Jewish, someone tells her she's Jewish. It's all coming back.
Her adoptive mother, maybe, or somebody like that.
Yes.
Married.
I felt bad for the adopted mother
I did
because,
too, married, yeah.
yeah, she seemed, in Hebrew, we say miskena. She was like a sad,
Mhm.
she didn't know how to work with Rose and, with Eamon and her husband. And I mean, the whole situation was hard. And I wonder if for the 1960s, if people gave their kids away to people they knew. Do you think that happened?
Well, when I was in high school, you went to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
You gave your
Never-
child to a farmer. Yeah.
Never to be seen again. You never
Yeah.
came back
Yeah.
to high school. Girls left, they had their babies.
Yeah.
Some went to the cradle in Evanston and their babies
Right.
were adopted out of the cradle. But I don't know that they knew the adoptive parents. Adoptions were closed, I thought, at that time in the 60s.
Well,
I think
yeah,
right. I think they were. Sue, I'm just so thankful that you shared that story about your daughter. I grew up in Crystal Lake. We're the only Jewish people. My next door neighbor had sex once, got pregnant, got married, and had a baby. Like she was having bridal showers and baby showers at the same time. And she was with her first husband. She's been married a couple times since, and had, I think, 2 other kids with him. But, that then so I graduated in 77 and that kid was born, her baby was born in 1977. So that would make her how old,
40,
47. And so the daughter also got pregnant in high school. Like my girlfriends are at least a great grandmother, if not a great great grandmother,
Mm.
because it's like a cycle that repeats. And, I think that I think that, positive stories,
Yeah.
like the one that Sue shared of, going on and having a life and, being able to choose your path in life is just so important. And,
At
um,
least now a young woman can finish high school. They weren't allowed to attend
Right.
public school and be
Mhm.
pregnant.
right.
So that really ended their lives at that time.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, at least, if a choice can be made between giving up a baby or having the baby,
Right.
it doesn't come at the expense of their not being able to continue their education.
Yes. Yes. Um, yeah. I mean, you know, it, look, as
I will
abortion
tell
becomes,
you,
yeah.
my daughter that I told you about has a master's degree in clinical psychology.
Mm.
So she did go to college and she did
Yeah.
get a graduate degree.
When we
None,
were when
who
we were
knows
new-
what would have happened?
when we
Yeah.
were newlyweds, I thought I was pregnant, and we were not ready to have a baby right after our wedding. And we strongly considered that we might have to go to New York. And fortunately, I was not pregnant at that time, but it was something that we were not ready. We were 21 years old. We weren't ready.
You were
And
babies yourself.
it would not have been right for us, but at least there was an option.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sylvia has a unique perspective on Judy. What does her point of view in London add to your understanding of Judy as a character? I'm not sure I remember that. How do the two sisters approach their own trauma and alienation differently?
Sophia eventually finds love with her partner
Mhm.
and makes it public.
Yes.
And she's very warm toward most people.
Yeah.
And Judy's aloof.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Although I
did she
think
have an illness where she was shaking at some point? That I wondered if she had Parkinson's or something.
Sylvia,
No,
Judy.
Judy?
mhm.
Mm.
Sylvia
And
was
that's
much
why she
more,
didn't. I'm
yeah.
sorry, Lynn, go ahead.
Sylvia was much more resilient, it seemed. She was the older sister. She was the one who
Yes.
always took charge. She was the one that, had
Yes.
all the friends and really kind of took Judy under her wing, which was really appropriate for an older
Yeah.
sister.
Yeah.
And that I think was part of the difference. And maybe that was part of why Judy really never, because she was used to being taken care of. Even though
Yeah.
she wanted to be out on her own, maybe
She
she just
did.
wasn't the kind of person who had that resilience and ability to, she was
Yeah.
able to say to her parents, I don't want what you want for me. But
Mhm.
and then what has happens, her daughter goes and does the same thing,
The
which is
exact same thing.
the same kind of thing.
I like that resilience. Sylvia was resilient. Leon is resilient.
Yeah,
And I guess to a point, so
Yeah.
is Rose.
yeah, yeah, she is. Because she had to grow up with everybody knowing that she was adopted, even though she didn't quite realize it and didn't find out for
Right.
sure to who her father really was, Uncle Father.
I actually think they knew because they were calling her a bastard at church.
Yes. Well,
So
because how do you have a baby all of a sudden and the mom wasn't ever pregnant?
exactly.
It's a small town here.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I think that I don't know, but I don't think we'd have those type of stereotypes today,
Hmm.
right? No, people wouldn't say that. And again, as we look at our celebrity culture of them getting, pregnant, then having the baby, sometimes getting married, sometimes not getting married, then getting divorced. So we have, and because of social media, we see their lives so intimately. It's, it's creepy. And when that flower went into her house,
Yeah.
and Emma thought it was a friend,
Hmm.
that's very, very creepy. And, I don't think that would happen today. You know, parents are much more vigilant,
Mhm.
what I'm gonna say.
Not leaving your 8-year-old home alone.
Right. There was someone who, it was just in the news, who left her,
10-year-old walked, well, didn't know that she was
Yeah.
taking a nap or something. It was just in the news today.
Yeah,
And
and
she got arrested
she got
because
arrested.
she went and walked to the grandparents' house or something.
Right.
Or the friend's house.
Right. So Emma's decision to record those unfinished songs leads to an epic fight with Judy. Did you find yourself on one person's side during their argument, or was it equally painful to consider both perspectives? Have you ever said anything you regret during a heated argument? Who hasn't?
That's why we have Rosh Hashanah, you know, that time between
Yom
Rosh
Kippur, yes.
Kippur, yeah. Yeah.
I tell this story all the time. I went to a funeral and it's friends of ours' parents, and you know, they were older than Arthur and I, and they get, you know, the eulogy, they never argued and they're going on. And I said to my husband, I go, well, what are they gonna say about us? You know, they argued all the time. And there's something, I don't know, unbelievable when we never argue. Who doesn't argue? Maybe that's just me.
Well, they say,
Andy and I'm
Or-
sorry,
yeah.
Paula, then Andy.
No, that's okay. I'm just going to say that, you know, psychologically, therapists will tell you it's much better to get things off your chest.
Mhm.
You don't
Good to
have
know.
you don't have to kill the other person, but
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, just this morning, where's the snow brush? What do you mean?
Right.
it's in the refrigerator. It's in the refrigerator, but take a look.
Where did you put it? Yeah.
Right. Andy.
Was hard for me to really care less about the songs. It seemed that they were
Oh.
both so dysfunctional that I really, in my mind, didn't make any judgment in terms of, yeah, maybe Emma should have asked permission, but there was such a riff. It was like, who did what to who? I didn't really care. If that sounds kind of cold, but I didn't really. It wasn't good or bad. They were just like a little
Yeah.
bit of ick on each side.
The the only thing I can remember, or not the only, but the thing that I remember from that part of the book is that I didn't want Judy to sue Emma. I was like, you can't.
And then Judy says later on to Rose, well, you know, I don't do anything that I say I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just sort of even undercutting her own.
Yeah. Her own self,
Yes.
undercutting herself. You know why? Then how
Maybe
can you-
Emma felt it was her legacy. You know, she didn't get love.
Right.
Felt unloved. That maybe she felt that this was her.
Right. And I was happy when Emma, you know, made those books popular. Those songs popular.
And Rose gave her the book. So, I mean, gave her the songbooks, right?
Yeah.
Rose
Yeah.
is the one who gave her the songs. Because
Yes.
otherwise she wouldn't have had them.
Yes. And you know, again, Merle brought up the last scene, but that just tied everything up in a bow, you know. They brought Rose up, they brought the granddaughter up, you know, everybody was there, except for the people who had died. That was the men who had died off.
The men.
Do you think she did that on purpose?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. It was a more feminist novel.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. So we're getting towards the end here, and our next book is by Gila Bloom, How to Love Your Daughter. And it also has some, it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say about that. I'll send out tomorrow, when I send out the recording and the book and everything. For January, I I picked a book that we've done before, with Legacy Lakeside, but it was like 14 years ago, The Wayward Moon by Janice Weitzman. And, even if you read it, there's no way you remember
I
it.
don't remember it.
No, and I'm sure, Lynn, that you and I read it. But
The
it's,
Wayward Moon, and
Yeah,
it doesn't even sound familiar.
wait, let's just see.
What is the date, Vanessa? Do we know for our December meeting?
Yes, yes. So for wait, now I have to go back here. The date is December 19th.
Thank you.
That's for December. And
Mhm.
January, I'll look and I'll send that all out tomorrow.
And who's the author of How to Love Your
The
Daughter?
Wayward wait, so, here we go.
Hilla Bloom.
Hila Bloom, HILA BLUM, How to
Okay.
Love Your Daughter. So those of us with daughters, it's going to be an interesting.
Mhm.
No, I'm
And
glad,
January is The Wayward Moon by Janice Weitzman. And the year is 854 in the village of Sora. So it's very Jewish, but it's set in the golden age of Islam. It's just taking us to another place. And I think you're really going to like it.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
It's different. Yeah.
Good.
And as while I have everybody here, December 8th, Cantor will be with Sue Benjamin doing the songs of Paul Simon. And there's, just if you have any questions about anything, let me know. It's great to see everyone.
Thank you.
Can I just tell everybody about something that I experienced last Sunday night? I went to the Northlight Theater. My daughter and son-in-law got tickets to see a Jewish comedian by the name of Elon Gold.
Oh, did you like him?
Oh my God, we laughed our sides out for an hour. He is so committed to his Judaism and extremely pro-Israel. And
Isn't he Israeli?
no, he's Jewish, but he's an
okay.
American.
Hmm.
And his history is very much the same as so many of us about how his family came here, escaping
Yeah.
the pogroms in Russia and
Right.
everything else. His history is like mine, but if you don't like smutty language, don't listen to him. But he is so funny, and
He's handsome.
he's a nice looking man.
Yeah.
But I'll just give you one little blurb that just had us all hilarious.
Yeah.
Walks out and he says, "I want you all to know that I got laid last night."
I-
And then he says, "But it was my wife who I've been married to for 30 years. She's the mother of my 4 children."
that's great.
Funny.
That's
Thank
very
you.
funny.
And-
Very, 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 very funny. All right.
It-
You
it-
left with a smile. It's just good to talk about these
I just
fun
wanted
things.
everybody, I would go anywhere to see this guy again. That's how.
Okay, that is quite a recommendation. I'll have to see if he's still at Northlight.
Thank you.
One night.
Thank
One
you.
night.
I'm sorry
All
I
right.
couldn't contribute more.
Thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving.
We'll
Thank
talk to
you.
everybody. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
You.